Well, welcome everybody. It's rarely has one of these been more timely, at least the topic at hand. As you know, this time we're going to be talking about what it's like to teach social action online. This isn't doing social action online, although that might come into it as well, but this is going to be how folks teach it online. And over the last year, we've gotten to know Marshall Gantz and have learned that he's been teaching his social action courses online for quite a while. So we asked him just earlier this week, frankly, if he would be willing to join us. And he's brought two of his colleagues.
Yay.
He'll introduce. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do quick introductions here in a second. We'll then focus on the conversation. They'll do a presentation of some kind, and I think they have a PowerPoint ready for that. And then we'll do questions and answers, and I'll let them facilitate. They're quite experienced at this. And with that, what I do here is I'm gonna just call names because I can see all your names and just make this a little bit more organized. So Miriam, can you just introduce yourself real quickly?
Miriam Shakow, College of New Jersey. I've been teaching.
Professor, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been teaching social action from my position in the sociology and anthropology department for 4 years.
Wonderful. Erin?
Hi, my name's Erin O'Hanlon. I'm at Stockton University and I work in the Office of Service Learning full time, and I also teach within communications.
Great. Amelia?
Hi all, I'm Emilia Yellow. I'm right now at Cambridge doing a postdoc at Harvard University. I'm working with Marshall, and I haven't done teaching in social action, but I think that this is going to be a great learning just when I go back to Barcelona, try to incorporate some of these learnings in my own teaching. I'm also working with Tinka, who is connected there, and maybe Tinka later can explain a little bit of the work that we are doing.
Great, thank you. Sam?
Sam Koenig, right? Yeah. Sam Koenig, the College of New Jersey, Bonner Scholars Program Coordinator. Looking forward to intaking information today and trying to apply it for the next couple of weeks with our Bonners who are going to be also doing remote work.
Great. Ruth?
Hi, Ruth Capsule, Siena College Associate Director, Academic Community Engagement, and I do not have a social action course myself, but I support a lot of faculty, both at Siena and regionally in this work. And we also have our Bonner Fellows and our Next Fellows that we are, so. And I've used a lot of Marshall Ganz's stuff in my workshops and classes, so.
Wonderful. Katie?
Hi everyone, Katie Kahn, Bonner Program Manager at TCNJ. Excited to see so many other TCNJ and other friendly faces here. That's all, hi.
Thank you. Lori?
Hi, Lori Johansson. I'm also with TCNJ. I'm the Research and Operations Coordinator at the Center for Community Engaged Learning and Research. I am not currently teaching, but I imagine that I will be facilitating our first year Community Engaged Learning courses in the future. So I'm very excited to be here.
Wonderful. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Myers-Lipton. I'm a professor in the Department of Sociology at San Jose State. Excited to be on the call with y'all.
Wonderful. Hi, Tinka.
Hi, I'm Tinka Schubert. I'm, as Emilia said, also from Barcelona, and currently a visiting scholar at Stanford University. I'm not teaching, but I'm looking forward to implement all the learning that we have done here in this webinar in the future.
Great. Ellen. Oh, you're on mute, Ellen.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm from Bates College. I'm the Associate Director for Community Engaged Learning here, and I direct the Bonner program. And our students are really hungry to do more social action. So I'm, a big Marshall Gantz fan and was really excited to see this.
Great. Dave. You got to unmute yourself, Dave Harker.
Hey, sorry about that. Dave Harker, Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Ithaca College, TCNJ grad. I have TCNJ roots there too. I teach the honors program Civic Engagement Seminar as a social action course, and I've been doing that for about 2 years, I think. This is the 4th time through. And as that program is going through some changes, thinking through how to integrate social action coursework and civic engagement coursework through other H&S, Humanities and Sciences programs.
Great. Luke.
Hi, everybody. Luke Terra, Associate Director at the Haas Center for Public Service at Stanford. A colleague here, Tom Ehrlich, and I are developing plans for a social action course next year, so eager to learn with you all. And I know this has been a tough week, so really lovely to see everybody's faces. Hope everyone's doing okay.
Yeah, thank you. Tochi?
Hi everyone, my name is Tochi. I'm a senior intern at the University of North Carolina, and just wanted to come on today to learn more about social action courses, especially in light of the coronavirus, and a lot of our students will have to do things remotely. So just trying to keep our students engaged and in social justice and learning.
Wonderful. Rachita.
Hi, I'm Rachita. I'm Community Engaged Scholarship Director at the Bonner Foundation, and just curious, so I'm glad to be here.
Great. Christy is on by phone. Can you hear us, Christy? There you go.
Yes, sorry. My name's Christy Cordier. I'm the Program Director here at the Bonner Foundation. I'm jumping on with a different kind of hat today since I run our AmeriCorps program, so seeing if we can kind of generate a little bit of ideas from that angle too.
Great. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen. Sorry, no video. I'm multitasking, so you don't want to see me running around. I'm a professor at Cal State Northridge, sociology. I haven't been on one of these calls for about a year because I only teach my organizing class once a year, and now it's going to be probably every 3 semesters. But second time teaching it with Scott's book, first time teaching it where students are completely launching. So of course this is very timely because they were doing such a grand job and now we're online. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. Horatio, I might be saying that wrong.
Hello everyone. Hi, I'm not sure, can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Good. That's
Okay.
you too.
My name is Horatio Hernandez. I'm serving at the College of New Jersey with the Bonner program. I'm an AmeriCorps member. I'm the Garden and Food Security Program Assistant, and I'm excited to be learning a bit more about the topic. So I'm glad to be here.
Cool. Thank you. Nesreen?
Yeah, hi, my name is Nasreen. I'm also a senior intern with the Bonner Leaders Program at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm here for the same reason Tochi mentioned, just trying to think about how we can move our weekly social justice content online.
Great. And finally, Nicole.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm a professor from Hudson Valley Community College, and my interest is that we are developing a civic engagement course and possibly a certificate that would be offered to high school students statewide. And so we're looking for a way that students would be able to engage rather remotely because they would be so spread out across the state.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's covered everybody. This 23, which is the largest we've had, by the way. And maybe it gets too big, we can't do this, but part of what we're trying to do here is create a community of folks that can learn from each other and feel comfortable emailing each other or joining these other sort of opportunities to connect with one another. So it's always worth to take a little extra time to do the introductions. I'm gonna hand it over now to Marshall and his folks, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby, and thanks everyone. My voice is a little impaired. It's not the virus, it's a cold. I had it checked out. Thanks for this opportunity to share some of what we've been learning about online teaching. I want to introduce my colleagues. Sarah, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Sarah Al-Rahib Dagger. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I met Marshall in 2014, and I've been working with him since on teaching and pedagogy and curricular development. So I'm really happy to be on the call with you all today.
Aditi.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditi, and I'm originally from South India. I took Marshall's course in 2018, was hooked, and then helped teach his organizing class and then the public narrative class online last semester. I'm really excited to be here with you all.
As you can see, the organizing class is a way to organize people, so including teaching support. So, no, it's been a real joy to work together with our whole team on this. We got this together at Bobby's request, so it's a little rough, but it's intended to focus on the online aspects of the course that we teach in organizing and in public narrative. The organizing class, we're actually teaching it right now. We have 146 students in that, and it focuses on 5 practices of organizing. Everybody's doing a project in their communities, and the class is kind of scaffolding for the project that they're doing. It could be in education or health, whatever. We have about people from about 25 countries in that class. And public narrative class that Sarah led and Aditi taught in last fall just focuses on public narrative, on how to tell a story of self, us, now, and then how to use narrative to deal with loss, difference, change, and power. So we haven't focused on the content so much as the method because of this urgency to learn how to do stuff online. So Sarah, should we get started?
Yes, so Aditi's actually going to share her screen, and then when we get to the video component, I'll share mine. So here we go.
Okay.
Can we get rid of the sidebar? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, there we are. Yeah, this is meant to this just shows what a typical screen looks like. As you can see, we're actually cheering there. Somebody did something on Zoom. And like I say, folks in this class are from every part of the world. So it has a special kind of excitement of crossing all these boundaries of culture and politics and to learn together, which is a real particular joy. And you can see people seem to be having a pretty good time. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a statement. Aditi, you want to just read this?
Sure. Video conferencing technology is finally reaching a level of consistency that makes it a great tool. As I previously mentioned, highly structured facilitation, including the use of section reps, were instrumental in making this distance format work. You might think we'd feel more detachment from our peers since we're not in the same room together. However, ironically, the fact that we see everyone all at once, especially in our section meetings, means that we have more awareness more awareness of everyone paying attention and being present.
This observation, can we go back to, oh, here, wait, let me adjust my screen. Yeah, I just want to be able to see everybody. Yeah, this observation is really based on a student in our distance learning class last fall from Norway. And she came to visit the Kennedy School and came to our on the ground class. And afterwards, I asked her, what would you think? And she said, well, I actually thought the online was more intimate. I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, I was sitting in class looking at the back of everybody's heads and you up front. But on Zoom, I see everyone's faces. And I see the tears and I see the laughter and I realize what I'm part of. And it sort of highlights how significant being able to see faces is. Because of course, facial expression is how we expressed emotion to one another. And it's probably the most powerful means of communicating emotion to one another. So the facial presence makes a huge difference. At least that's what we've discovered. So go to the next slide. So we've organized this into preparing for the class, launching it, the interactive relational pedagogy, we call what we're doing, and then wrapping it up. So let's go on to preparation. So of course we have a syllabus with assignments, readings, videos, tech instructions, the whole thing. So, I mean, it obviously needs to be planned out pretty well in advance so that people have access to different materials. The way we teach, we've done a number of different things. Sarah in particular has done online teaching of this material as the instructor with tech know-how. We've also done it as instructor with a tech support person. And for the large course that we teach, we have an instructor, we have 2 program support staff, a head teaching fellow and 5 teaching fellows. That's to accommodate about 100 students. And the one we're teaching right now, we have 7 teaching fellows for 140 students. So we work this in a variety of different modes. Next slide. This is how the flow works. Usually on a Tuesday, we'll have a lecture discussion. That's where we explain, model, debrief, and those, our pedagogy is basically explain, model, practice, debrief. And so in that session with everyone, we do lectures, we have discussion, we work on the chat, we explain concepts, people participate. We'll say a little bit more about how. Then we have assignments that they do offline, where they're doing a reflection paper or a case, readings, depending on what it is that we're teaching. Plus we have these skilled practice assignments that individuals do in pairs. And like if we're trying to teach a one-on-one meeting, they pair off and practice one-on-one on Zoom, and it's recorded. And then the TF can review that and comment on it. So we actually see the practice that's going on. And then we meet in section, which is typically about 18 to 20 people, led by a teaching fellow when we're doing that, in which people present cases, or we talk about people's projects, do role-play discussion, practice, and we can break down into small groups and do small group practice there as well. So that's kind of the basic flow. We've done variations. Sarah, maybe you could just say a word about how you've done your the thing with arts and culture.
Yeah, sure. So it was just me who was teaching. It was a group of about 20-something students. And the structure was kind of similar, where there was a lecture that included models on a Tuesday, and then on a Thursday, we'd have folks prepare case presentations, and we'd actually do live group coaching on the case presentation. They'd present a challenge that they're currently grappling with, a leadership challenge that they're currently grappling with, and we'd use the frameworks that we had learned in lecture to help coach that individual. So we'd use breakouts, but also large group discussion to live coach that challenge.
And maybe a word on the mayors.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been doing this project with mayors for the last, I guess it's been 3 years. We start with an in-person workshop, 6-hour workshop, where we introduce public narrative, story of self, story of us, story of now. And then we take it online and we break it into 6 separate sessions. In each session, we do a deep dive into each of the elements. But in between those, and in these sessions, they have a little bit of a lecture component, but it's mostly them practicing and peer coaching one another, with expert coaches being there in the background to help guide the peer coaching that's going on. But then in between the sessions, we also offer one-on-one coaching between us as coaches and the mayors to help them develop their stories in between each of the sessions as well. And then that kind of culminates in everybody sharing their final linked narrative of Self Us Now in a celebration sort of wrap-up session that we do.
Yeah, no, thanks, Erin. I just want to point out how critical coaching is to all the teaching that we do. We teach our students how to coach, our TFs coach, and that's sort of a fundamental way of practicing what we understand to be leadership as enabling others to achieve shared purpose under conditions of uncertainty. And the enabling others is in the coaching. And so we find when students learn to coach as well as teach, it enhances, it deepens the whole teaching, and they discover they can be resources to one another in rather surprising and interesting ways. Next slide. This is for the teaching, when we're teaching with a whole team. This is a cycle of preparation of the teaching and then the debriefing that goes on, because parallel to the class is the team leadership and team coaching and team preparation. So that sort of runs, that's sort of the engine that runs the class behind. Next slide. So, you know, having done preparation, which is very, I treated very lightly here, launching the course. The first thing is that we're consciously developing a learning community, a relationally grounded learning community. So we're trying to do the opposite of the webinar where somebody talks and everybody watches. And so since the whole foundation of the work is relational, we start off with a one-on-one meeting with each student, with teaching fellow with each student. And our teaching team introduces themselves with stories of self. And we try to shift the whole conversation to story of self kind of grounding so that we can be in much, again, it emphasizes this relational dimension that if you don't show up in class, it's not just you're letting down yourself, you're letting down your peers who depend on your contributions for their learning. So it's trying to build that whole interdependence into it. We do significant norm setting and an intentional norm setting to create a holding environment within which we can do this kind of teaching, and the norms are in the next slide. Our agendas are transparent, we go over them, and they're strictly timed. And the timing thing takes some getting used to. But when we have limited time, we know we have limited time, we have an hour and a half for the class, then we have to make sure that we use it well so that everybody can participate, that we want to have participate, we can get through everything. So we have a timekeeper. And then, of course, we work on very active intentional facilitation. Now we'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But we use the first class as a launching class. Prior to this, the students have had a class in the tech on how to use Zoom, so we don't get cluttered up with that in the first class. We do that beforehand, and then we can just start. Let's go to the next slide. These are examples of some of the norms that we establish. And the way we establish norms is we ask for suggestions, we make suggestions, and then we agree on them. And so explicit norms and a norm correction. In other words, like if you don't show up on time, there's a consequence. I mean, online, what can the consequence be? Well, you can do a silly dance, you can make a silly face, you can do a 10-second performance, you can on and on and on. People are very, very creative. But we find it's very important to do that so that nobody's a cop. Nobody winds up trying to police engagement, that everybody shares responsibility for it. And by doing it in a humorous way, it really, really helps. We have everyone read Carol Dweck on growth mindset and fixed mindset so that we quite explicitly say this is about learning. This is not about performance. There's going to be mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. We use the bicycle riding as the model of our pedagogy. You got to get on, you're going to fall, then you learn to get back on. Respecting time, that's a critical norm. Step up, step back, which takes a little, that's, if you're usually quiet, speak up, and if you're always taking airtime, then how about letting somebody else? That takes a lot of intentionality online because it's very easy to just be online. And we find that facilitation has to be a lot more active in terms of calling on people or drawing people in that in a classroom you would do through all kinds of nonverbals and so forth. But with this, you have to make an extra effort. Then have a clear rule of how to participate. Either raise your hand or you can go through the participant box, but just so everybody knows how to do that. And then it's a norm that everybody have their video on because everybody needs to be present and we need to be able to see each other's presence and learn that we're part of a group, we're part of a community, and that's what seeing can actually do. Sarah or Aditi, any particular norm to add to this?
I feel like it's a good list.
Okay, we can come back and talk about more later. Let's go to the next. But this is so important to create the kind of holding environment that's necessary for the kind of learning that we're doing, which can be to deal with some emotionally challenging questions and failures and stuff like that. So let's go to the next slide. So then these are some of the elements in actually conducting the class. Next slide. We'll start a session with a welcome, of course, some review. We use slides like now, we use charts, we use maps, we use lots of visuals, and the visuals are really helpful. We try to avoid slides like this one that has just a list of words, but actually slides that actually, contribute through images and through other elements to show what it's about. On lecture discussion, I'll often start with a lecture lecture points. And then we call people to participate in that. So it's a back and forth. It isn't just like just sitting there and just giving a lecture the whole time. One thing we do, we have 7 sections in the organizing class. So we have a representative from each section participate directly with me so I can be in conversation with them. But then we'll also have the chat going parallel to that. And a chat monitor can then call to our attention someone who has something particular to contribute or a question to ask or whatever. But we have this core set of students with whom, out of a class that big, having 7 to interact with is really helpful. Cold calling, we do. And then open discussion. Well, that's when we can have the most fun, when we've covered sort of what we need to cover, and we can just open it up, and then people can raise their hands or on the chat, and we can just engage in conversation. It really flows quite well online. We can do polling, like have everybody say where they are in their project, whatever it might be, and use that. The chat, we can talk more about that. We find it not to be distracting, but to actually be more like counterpoint to what we're doing. It's just another way people can participate, but it does require a monitor. And then we end up with evaluations in every class where we do, what worked, what needs to be improved, and what were the key learnings and takeaways. Then in sections, it's usually 15 to 20. And as it says here, student presentations, group work, we can do breakouts there. Next slide.
Sorry, Marshall, if I can just jump in. We also show videos during some of the lectures. And the discussion is sort of, we clearly decide which of this is going to be a sort of closed discussion with a smaller group versus open discussion. And everyone's aware of when we're moving between these. And one more aspect is we're always trying to think about what we want people to look at on their screen. If they're looking at the slides, then they're not going to be looking at the gallery view of a lot of spaces. And so we sort of consciously switch between these to decide on what's going to most help their learning in each part of the session.
That reminds, one of the things we've found, we use a lot of videos, especially in the public narrative class, and having them look at it ahead of time and then trying to debrief doesn't work. They have to see it right then, and then you debrief it, because they simply won't remember. But when you show it right then and debrief it, it can be really effective, a really effective form of teaching.
And subtitling.
Yeah, because we also have many people whose first language is not English, and simply to facilitate a tech, we subtitle all the videos. It really, again, it helps for everyone to be able to understand what's happening. Next slide. This is an example of a lecture slide, and where the slide is taking up most of the screen. Of course, you can maneuver Zoom so that you can make it real small or real big, and you can see more people or not. It's flexible for that, which is a good thing. This is just an illustration of an introduction to public narrative about strategy and story and strategy, heart, head, and hands kind of teaching that we use to frame what we're doing. Next slide. This is an example of our discussion, our section reps for one of the classes where we tried to draw for maximum diversity from, different countries, of course, racial, gender, ethnic diversity, and all that. As you can see, this was a pretty wild one. The folks in Australia, I should say, or in Japan, for them, when we do class, it's like 2 in the morning. So they're our heroes. They show up, and so nobody else can complain about anything because they're there, and they're sort of models for us. It's really fun to work with them. Next slide. And let's see, discussions, cheering on chat. Let me see this a little bigger. Aditi, do you want to explain what you mean by cheering?
I mean, this is one of the reasons we say the chat is really helpful in getting the energy up. Not everyone is speaking at the same time because it would be chaotic to hear 80 people all at once. But let's say someone from your section is the section rep for that day. So everyone's like, go Andrew, great going, what you said. People sort of agree or disagree with points that were made. So it's a sort of, like Marshall said, it's not a distraction. It's a sort of parallel conversation that allows people to participate in different ways.
Yeah.
And we make it clear that, participating in the chat is not a requirement. And if you find it distracting, you don't have to do it. But for those who enjoy it, they really enjoy it. So we've had times when the chat is absolutely on fire, and all of us as teaching fellows are also on there, just sort of prompting people like, oh, what do you think about this? Or affirming or raising questions, so that, again, all of us are involved. And this is all just to say that this is not at all a passive learning experience for anyone.
Yeah, this is, there's lots of snapping too, to show support. I mean, that is another reason to have all the faces, because people show their support and their concern, and you can really read the class then to an extraordinary degree. So Sarah, should we show the clip right now?
We sure can.
We have a short 2-minute clip of an interaction that with a particular student. This was working on Story of Self in our online public narrative class, and the student was Manny Loops from Salinas, actually from Monterey County. Works with students there. Yeah.
Yeah, so where this clip starts is Marshall just kind of cold called Manny and did some live coaching with him on his story. This is the reaction afterwards, so the debrief after that interaction. So here we go. Actually, let me do one more thing to optimize sound. For those of you that don't know, a neat trick is when you share your screen, there are 2 boxes at the bottom that allow you to share your computer sound and optimize for full screen. So sometimes when there's an issue with audio, when you're sharing a video, that's a good trick to help work through that. So here we go.
Manny, thank you so much for sharing. Let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you, Marshall.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. And I'm sure everyone appreciated the conversation. So, Tara, what was I just doing other than making Manny feel very uncomfortable and everybody else very happy they were not Manny?
Some incredible coaching, kind of finding those key moments and key choice points in his life for him to, you could even see it in his face. And I saw you take things, when you saw it in his face, you took that further. And yeah.
So, and what kinds of questions was I asking, Andrew?
I guess relatively open-ended ones that were guided.
Is it freezing for folks?
Yeah, the buffering is a problem.
Let's see here. It's been buffering for like an hour, so I don't know what's going on here. Let me try this one more time.
It's
guiding him along through his life, but allowing him to focus on obviously the events that resonated with him and what was important.
Yeah, and Lisa, what was I looking for? A lot of data?
A couple of things. In some cases, you were trying to elicit a bit more detail about what happened.
This is why it's really good to have a tech guy.
Key turning points.
Just remember the red.
I think that'll give the idea.
Yeah, I think it gives the idea. Sorry, I don't know. It's been buffering for literally an hour, so I don't know what went wrong there.
Yeah, well, this is why to have a tech person, really, because Murphy's Law applies all the time. And we've been fortunate to have terrific tech support and sort of use a Slack channel to communicate issues and problems so that it doesn't interrupt with the class as a whole. So let's go. But you can see what we were doing there was debriefing people on this exercise I just did coaching Manny on his story of self. And you can see how it works, and it works quite well. I mean, just like you would in a classroom, except again, you can kind of see everybody. Let's go to the next slide. After cheering on chat. Now, don't be overwhelmed by this, but these are functions that need to be taken care of somehow. and whether with roles or in functions. Sharing the screen, monitoring the chat. If you use slides for scribing, for takeaways or pluses or deltas, if you use slides for that, you need not. Attendance manager just means to make sure who's there. Section rep coordinator, if you have section reps. A tech person, someone to pick who should speak. That's in the case of the chat and you're monitoring the chat. A poll, reminderer, and post-lecture sharer. The recording, link, slides, chat, transcript. One of the cool, well, we'll say more about that in a moment. Let's go on to the next slide. And these are just general tips about facilitation and encouraging participation that are probably quite familiar. And it's just the same online, except it takes a little more initiative. It takes being a little more proactive, but you have lots of tools to work with, and you can do all the other kinds of things you would normally do. Next slide. Now, these are some of the values that we didn't expect that we learned. First of all, online teaching, you can do cross-contextual learning, which in our case is incredibly, incredibly valuable because you can transcend geography, you can transcend neighborhoods, you can transcend all kinds of groupings and bring people together for a shared learning experience. The fact you can see faces of the whole class brings a kind of capacity for emotional communication in that sometimes is not present even in a classroom, but it can be very present online in a surprising way. It also requires paying attention because, the norm is all cameras on. So if somebody's like not there, they're not there. So it actually requires a lot of attention. The classes are recorded and transcribed in Zoom. And you can access multiple resources pretty easily because you're online and you can go to different places to get different things. Next slide. We conclude every single class with evaluations. We go to the reps in that if it's a large class. We ask for what worked, what needs to be improved, and then what were the key learnings that people took away from that class. Very, very helpful to articulate all this, capture it, and then for our own evaluations, it's useful. Next slide. This is an example of a mid-course survey on how we're doing. This actually shows improvement from the final and the midterm, where we do a midway evaluation, we do an end evaluation, and see kind of how we're doing. On different pedagogies, we do it on sections, and because we're trying to stay on top of what's happening the whole time. Next slide. Oh, and this is for our own internal, our qualitative, we use Wordles and qualitative feedback to see, to take advantage of the qualitative piece. Next slide. And we end the whole class with celebration. In other words, our last class is a celebratory class where each section does their own video, puts on their own skit, or does something to celebrate the learning that we did together. That's mainly what we do in that last class. And it ends it with a very, it ends it on a very up note, because one of the things we're trying to teach is whether you win your campaign or lose your campaign, you have to celebrate, because you have to honor the values that you are honoring in doing the work and the effort that you made. Not by pretending a loss is a win, but by celebrating the effort, the energy, and the sacrifice that went into it. And I think is that it, Sarah? Thank you. Okay. So we can stop there and just open up to conversation, discussion, questions, and everybody who's here that has a video, please turn it on so we can see you. It's sort of part of the value of this medium. So you can just raise your hand. I think we don't need to use chat for this, or we. Excuse me.
Quick question, Martin, that the class sessions are recorded and transcribed, and that the transcription happens in Zoom. Is that an automated function? How does that?
Yeah, it does it. And
wow.
So it's pretty cool.
It depends on your account, though.
Oh.
Yeah, it depends on your level of subscription. So that's the only downside. I think we have a business subscription, so it does the automatic transcription for us. Yeah.
Well, but it's
the platinum version.
Yeah, but it's a pretty cool thing, and it's worth checking out. I mean, you can also do interviews with people online, and they're automatically transcribed for qualitative research, if you think about that for a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the
Great,
only
thanks.
sort of catch is if you aren't a native speaking, if English isn't your first language and if they don't pick up the accent in the same way, it could scramble a couple of things sometimes very amusingly. That's just something to watch out for.
Thanks.
Excellent. Comments, questions, reactions, rejections. Okay, up in the right-hand corner, Erin.
So in terms of videos, do you typically limit to a certain length for effectiveness? You know, are you like typically showing something under 3 minutes, under 5 minutes?
You know, it's really interesting because when students record their public narratives, it's 5 minutes limit or 2 minutes in the practice. But where we use videos to teach from, we'll use longer videos. We have this former graduate student who's an amazing film editor. And so for the public narrative class, the module 2, we have edited versions of North Country, of Milk, of in the Matter of Sex, that he's edited down to 18 minutes or 15 minutes. And they're terrific because then we can debrief and teach from them. So I know there's a rule you're not supposed to have over a certain amount of time. I think it really depends on the teaching purpose and what kind of video it is. We're using, you know, we use Sesame Street, we use Mean Girls, we use a lot of, like a variety of stuff that helps demonstrate what we're trying to teach.
Marshall, how many people are in a group when you have a TA with that group? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 30? What's the normal?
Aditi, you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think we've done between 10 to 20. Up to 20 works fine, I think. And then within that, we can put people into smaller breakout rooms of 3 people or 4 people where, you know, the learning in this course happens when people sort of tell their story and get coaching on their story. So, or if we want to do sort of turn and talk, pair shares, that's when we could use the breakout room. But otherwise, I think even up to 25 is good because you can see 25 people at once on your screen. So I would just teach, open it up for discussion, put it on gallery view, and then look at who's raising their hands, who's smiling, who's tuned out, things like that.
Sarah, anything to add?
I just add that we don't kind of leave the breakouts to do what they want. We sort of go in there and support the coaching that's going on. Because a lot of times, you know, are people actually using the breakouts for what they're meant to be using them for? So we try to go in there and offer as much support as we can, and not in a kind of weird, like looking over your shoulder way, but in hopefully more of a helpful, we're here to support your learning kind of way. So it is active still. We go in and we participate.
I think that's my biggest concern because we have, let's say, 25 students and there might be 5 breakouts and I can't be in all 5 rooms at once. No. So and ironically, or maybe just right on time, Marshall, I'm starting public narratives next week as we go online. It's perfect, right? So something that I've never taught before and I can't be in the rooms with them at the same time. So I'm just, you know, I'm scrambling to think, can I borrow these 2 folks?
you have to make a separate arrangement, but
I know.
You know, it is one of the reasons that we focus on teaching coaching so much, because by teaching them coaching, it raises the odds that what they're going to be doing with each other is stronger than if we just say, just go listen to each other. Yeah. But you're right. And so what a TF does is drop into the different sections and see what's going in the different groups, see what's going on. And it's understood that's part of the contract. It's not like an intrusion or anything like that. This is all part of the learning process.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get some interns to try to, you know, some or people have gone through my class to come and help. So we'll see if I can pull it off.
You know, Sarah does an excellent training on coaching in particular.
So
just by way of mentioning it, and Aditi also does some very good training. So Yes. Okay. Who is it? Yeah.
We had Ruth was raising her hand earlier on.
Oh, Ruth.
You're muted, Ruth.
Where are you? Oh, there, Ruth.
I'm here. I'm here. I had typed it into. I don't know if it was said or not. Are the breakouts a function of the business Zoom, or is it just the creation of concurrent Zoom meetings that you can go in and out of? What is that?
No, it's well. Go ahead, Sarah.
I think all the accounts. If you're the host of the meeting. Unfortunately, if you're the co-host, you can only move around in rooms. But if you're the host, you can actually assign people to rooms.
Yes.
And close the breakout rooms. So as long as you have the host function, then you can create and stop the breakout.
So basically, you're creating five. Like if I have 5 teams, for example, in my class, then I would be creating 5 meetings. And assigning and inviting only the people in those teams to those meetings.
Exactly right. So you could either do a random assignment, meaning I want 5 groups of 3 and Zoom will automatically assign people, or you can curate the groups yourself. So you could put specific people in specific groups.
Right.
And once you press open all rooms, everybody gets a pop-up where they can click accept and everyone gets put into those breakout rooms simultaneously.
So is this part of the Zoom business that you have, or any Zoom will do this?
Like even my basic Zoom account does it, as long as you're the host.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to clarify, Ruth, it's not separate Zoom meetings. So for example, we can all be in this meeting right now. If Robert assigns me to be the host, I can send everyone into groups of 3. And then I can sort of broadcast a message as a host. I can broadcast messages. I might use that to send instructions or to say, hey, you guys have 10 minutes left. Or whatever that might be, and then it sends people into these rooms, and then when you say bring people back, it brings them back within a minute.
They don't have to go to the bathroom in between. I mean, it's really really good for keeping on time.
Wow, mind blown. Thank you.
Yeah. You are. Sarah, who else did you? Oh, yeah.
Can't hear you.
I was wondering if, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if, I know you do a lot of coaching. I was wondering if you have like key questions to, at least in the beginning, to help people coach each other in the small groups, like a kind of series, almost like a checklist, so that they
froze
stuff in coaching each other.
Sarah, you want to respond?
We lost your audio for a second, but I think what you're asking is there a list of kind of quick questions or a guide that you can give people when they go in to coach each other? Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have kind of a coaching wheel or a protocol where we explain kind of the 5 different steps of how to coach one another. But also, I think when we're doing short sessions, for example, and we don't have a ton of time to set it up, like we ask people, hey, listen for where there are gaps in understanding or where you're not clear, follow your curiosity and just ask questions. And trust that the person that you're asking is the person who has the answer to their own gaps or their own questions. Because what happens is we'll go into these breakouts and we hear people just giving advice or telling people what to do or guiding people, right? But what we're really trying to teach people is the art of asking great questions and following your intuition, your curiosity to ask good questions that could help that person get further along in whatever it is that they're working through. But we do have some resources that we could pass your way.
Sure.
We have some resources, video resources on coaching public narrative. We have written resources on leadership coaching that we could easily kind of compile and send your way after this session. So you just have a few resources at your fingertips.
Yeah, Sarah, actually, if you sent that stuff to me, I'll get it back out to both our whole discussion list as well as on the Bonner Learning Community page we have.
Easy peasy. We could do that.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, the coaching, the how to coach public narrative videos are really, really good because they're role plays and you can actually see. And just to underscore what Sarah said, the way we introduce coaching is you got to help this person without giving it. All you can do is ask questions and to teach people to listen and to probe and to inform that way rather than just giving a bunch of advice. Anyway, get the point. What else? other.
Well, I have a question. Oh, no, go ahead, Luke.
You sure? Well, I'll just say real quick, one of the things I really appreciated were the norms around specifically for online, because we do norm setting for classes just as a general practice, but I hadn't really appreciated that there would be particular norms you'd want to highlight in an online format. So that was super helpful. Thanks for that. And just wanted to, I know we have other folks who have great experience teaching online. I don't, so I'm eager to learn from you all. If others have norms that are successful or important for them, and don't mind sharing in the chat box, it'd be great to track what other great tips people have, the kind of norms that are important to highlight in that.
Yeah, it's chat etiquette.
Can I just jump in on the norms question for a minute? I know that a lot of universities are telling students that here are the norms that you're going to have to sort of follow for every single meeting you have. And the spirit of that is like, here's what we're imposing on you. Like, you have to be looking at your video screen all the time. What we do is a sort of collective process of sharing suggestions and coming to an agreement collectively, because this doesn't work if everyone's not in it. It's in buy-in and commitment from everyone. So whatever way you need to do that with your class, whether that might be, let's talk about why we need to do each of these things. What happens if someone breaks a norm? What's going to be most productive for our learning? So those framing questions, I guess, would set this up in a way that people see themselves as wanting to follow these norms rather than just, oh, my instructor said I have to do this, I'm going to do this.
They're also known as community agreements. Because norms sometimes elicit a reaction.
So my question is actually a very broad one. So maybe it can be the last one, but there's, as I've heard Scott talk about his class, and we've been talking over now for a couple of years, it's clear for his class, he's a master teacher. It's very clear that you and your colleagues have really learned how to do something here of pretty profound significance, and particularly in this day and age. How long have you been doing this? How long have you refined this?
Oh, the online?
The online part is in particular.
Well, we started the organizing class in I guess it was 2010. We did I was totally skeptical, and somebody at the Kennedy School of Executive Ed convinced me to try it. So we did a little pilot in the summer with just like about 6 or 8 people in 3 different cities. And it just blew my mind. The seeing people is, to me, what was transformational. So then we began evolving it over the years, and we did public narrative online for the first time last fall. So that was the first time we did that. But yeah, and every year you find new things, you find other things to tweak. It's just, and we explain to everybody it's a work in progress, and it always will be, because there's change and we learn new stuff and so forth. But yeah, it's a good question.
Well, and it's very inspiring. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it feels
Well,
like, oh, there's a whole world here of content will matter. The kind of content, some content will work better in this way than others, but this is so relational in the way you approach it.
That's it.
And that can work effectively this way.
Yeah.
You have to scale it. So I got the ratio of sort of TAs or, and the size of the sections, but still it's just really surprises me how much that relational stuff can happen this way. And you've explained why with the facial expressions and the other kind of stuff.
It's a real revelation, Bobby. And I think part of the challenge is that when we leave the tech up to the engineers and not claim it as teachers, as educators, as organizers, as leaders, we need to shape its usage, and because of course folks who don't do what we do are going to design it in particular ways. To me, that's what's exciting about this moment is the opportunity to learn how to use this tech to create greater collective capacity, more real community, and more learning across all kinds of boundaries. So it really is a great opportunity to take control of the tech so that it strengthens our humanity rather than substituting for it. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what we can do. I was just going to say we have a parallel class to the one that started last year in Amman that's all in Arabic, that now has 70 students, and it's modeled on the same thing, but it's all in Arabic with Arabic teaching fellows. We have people from 11 different countries in that. And so it's a very portable kind of thing. as well. And they put that together in a year. So, I mean, they'd learned from what we've been doing. But yeah, we encourage people to try this.
Yeah.
We also like did a course over WhatsApp.
Sarah, tell them about that.
To reach folks in like the most rural parts of South Africa, and using only text and voice notes. We taught public narrative, and it was fascinating. Obviously not as much opportunity as Zoom provides with video and faces and all that, but still they were able to create real trust in the community, the learning community, and some fantastic stories came out of this platform as well. So even on very low bandwidth, there's a way to build community and make it happen, as long as vulnerability is modeled and people take leadership clearly and like knowing with what direction they're trying to go. So
you can see you're talking to converts here.
I wonder,
we're evangelists. Yeah.
I wonder if, you know, just the students' mentality going into this. You know, I think of like, this is the greatest educational experiment in the past 100 years, right? I mean, where has pedagogy transformed so much in 2 weeks, where we're going to, all these professors teaching online who haven't had experience, and you have this wealth of knowledge. So grateful for that. But I'm wondering about the student state of mind as we enter in. I know they're fearful and scared, and so there's going to be all these other issues. And I've just been thinking about, you know, starting my first classes around just kind of start thinking about kind of a community analysis of what's going on to kind of ease them into this. I don't know what the best way is, but that's why I'm thinking of starting anyway.
It's an interesting point, and I think, of course, you know, our students are much more familiar with the technology than many of us.
That's for sure.
And are much more comfortable with it, and so it's. I mean, that's just a reality. And so what's new is more in the learning context, and that's where building the relationships right from the beginning, I think, is really shifts the ground. I mean, that's why we spend the time with one-on-ones, with the norms, with introductions, so that people can see, oh, you can actually build relationship here. And then the norms also help with that. But I wouldn't, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes when we're anxious about something, we can telegraph that. And I think it's better not to. But,
or,
you know,
I mean, as someone who's been more on the student side, we know that this is an experiment for everyone. We know that nobody saw this coming. We know you don't have all the answers, you know. So it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to be vulnerable about it. We'll work on it together. I think if you can create that sense of community of like, we're all figuring this out together, this can be a really beautiful bonding experience, I think.
And I'll close this by one, thanking Marshall and Aditi and Sarah, and number two, saying that I think a sense of community as we head off into this next period of time is going to be really, really important for everybody. And that with that sense of experimentation and sort of, which buys you some a forgiveness and a sort of an openness to making mistakes and be a little clunky here and there. I think people are really going to appreciate being able to see each other's faces and know that we're doing okay and that they're working together on something, whether it's, and this kind of class, you know, is more needed than ever. I really want to thank you guys. I guess we should do one of these things, guys, everybody.
Well,
and, I'm gonna end the recording. You're welcome to stay on a little longer to say some more hellos and thank yous. And I'll have this stuff up and I'll send emails out so everybody knows. And Marshall, if you guys can, if you don't mind sending the PowerPoint, if that's okay, and any other links, we'll make those available.
We sure will. No, look, thank you all for this opportunity. It's great to be able to share it. And our students are really co-creating this stuff with us. So it really is a joint work in progress on how to do this. So good luck, everybody.
Thank you. See you guys soon.